And so there they are in this room with the surveillance monitor, looking at the screen in disbelief. They look at each other, they look back at the screen, they look at each other, they're shocked. They cannot believe it. There Utandi is, walking around with this unidentified man. They don't know who this is. They've never met this man. They've never seen him. They've never seen him around Paul. Who is this? And why does Tandy look calm, but at the same time, like she doesn't know what's going on? Why does she look like this? What is going on? They're trying to pick up on anything they can in these videos. Now, Lady's still recording. She's still recording. And then the man finds a way to tell them, I've got a camera that faces the car park area. I can show you that footage. And so they wait, and they wait for him to rewind it and look for it and play it back and match up the times. And what do they see? Boom. There's Paul sitting in the driver's seat. They cannot believe their eyes. They cannot believe it. They cannot believe it. They cannot believe it. This to them is starting to feel more airy. Like, why? How? What is going on? Why is Utandi looking like this? Why? Paul is here. Why was Paul acting? There are so many questions that are coming to their mind. Immediately, Zala picks up her phone and she calls Tulani, Utandi's brother, to tell him what they're seeing. And she tells Naledi, call Paul. And so she calls Paul, and it rings and it rings and it rings, and there's no answer. She calls Paul again. It rings and it rings. She tries him the third time, and the phone goes straight to voicemail. Now they're panicked. Now they are panicked. They're thinking Paul has kidnapped our friend, and we're in this foreign country, and we don't really speak the language. Where are we going to start? How? What? Now remember, they had driven this far out. They were about to leave this town they were in and enter another one. And so it's getting dark out. So they decide, well, we can't drive around, just us four women in the middle of the night. We have to go back to the B&B, wait for Tulani, who's on his way, and then we all decide from there what needs to happen. So they make their way back to the Airbnb, and of course the mood in the car is very airy. They're scared, they're panicked, they're all these things. They don't know what to say. So eventually they get back to the Airbnb and they're talking about it. They're waiting for Tulani. Zala calls Tulani again to find out how far he is, and he says he's about 2 hours out. It's getting much later, getting darker, and Naledi says it. Guys, I'm just going to say this. I think that Tandy is involved in this. I don't think that she's a victim. I think that she's involved in this. And I don't know why she would do something like this, but I don't think it's what we think it is. I think she's involved. And Zala is saying, Naledi, wait. Before you start speculating, before we start putting stuff out there, let's just wait. Let's calm down. Let's figure this out. In fact, let's have a bottle of wine. Let's just be calm. The whole time, Erica is distraught. At this point, Erica is so emotional. She's crying. She doesn't know what to make of any of it. It's too crazy. Eventually, Tulani arrives and they have this conversation and tell him what they've seen and everything leading up, and Paul's demeanor and the way he was behaving and this, that, and the other. Now, before Tulani arrived, Zala, who was friends with Tandy before Naledi and Erica came into the picture, explained to them that, guys, there is so much more to the story than you know. Tandy has been with Paul for a while. And unfortunately, what you guys don't know is that Tandy comes from a very traditional family. A very, very traditional Zulu family, as I had mentioned earlier. And her father is not trying to hear anything about her marrying a man who isn't Zulu. It's as simple as that. And this thing goes deep. It goes deep. And I want to be able to tell you guys everything, but I feel it's Tandy's place to tell you what really goes on at home. So Tulani arrives and they start explaining everything to Lani and to Tulani, and they come up with this idea that tomorrow we're going to drive into that next town and we're going to keep looking. We're going to keep looking until we find Tandy. And so they do. The next morning they wake up early, they drive into the next town, they ask a few people, keep driving, going into shops and into anything, convenience stores, anywhere they think people could or would have seen something. And they keep going and they keep going. And an hour and a half in, they find a man walking around and they ask him, have you seen this woman by any chance? And they're showing him pictures and they're talking and they're trying to explain. And he says, no, I haven't seen him. But he sees the direction in which they're going. So he says to them, can you guys take me further in that direction, seeing that you're going anyway? I have to attend a celebration and I just need transport. Can you take me? And they all kind of feel bad because they've stopped this man on his way to ask him and bombard him with all these questions and this, that, and the other. And it is on their way. Now it's further into the village, but it's still on their way. So Tulani, being the man, says, okay, well, we can take you. He tells the man to jump in the front. Zala, Naledi and Erica should sit at the back. And so they drive in and they finally arrive at their destination. This elderly man says to them, can I please give you some food? I don't have money, but I'd like to please give you a bit of food to thank you. And they say, no, it's okay. And he's like, no, I have to do that. Let me give you a bit of food. I'm going in to get some. And Zala says, I really need the bathroom. Is there any way I can use the bathroom? And this elderly man says, yes, there's actually a bathroom right there, which was not too far from the car. And Tulani was like, well, I'm going to stand outside the car and watch you, Zala. But yes, go to the bathroom because we've still got quite a way to go. So Zala goes to the bathroom. Tulani's standing out the car watching her. And they can hear all this joyous celebration and drums and loud music and people laughing and drinking and eating, like a huge festivity going on. Zala uses the bathroom and comes out. As she's fixing herself up, she's staring into the distance and watching what's going on. Next thing, she starts running towards them frantically, but I mean frantically, to the point that Naledi and Erica jump out the car because they're confused, and Tulani's already walking towards Zala, like, what are you doing? What's going on? And she says, Tandy is here. Tandy is here. And he's like, what do you mean Tandy is here? And she's like, come, Tandy is here. And they make their way to the front where everybody's crowded. Make their way to the front. Tulani is unapologetically pushing past people between the crowd. This is his sister. He's pushing past people. And he gets to the front and he sees Tandy there, wearing traditional attire. He hears people talking and there's talk about Mrs. this and joyous celebration and commentaries and this, that. And they're like, why do they keep on calling her Mrs. So-and-so? What is going on? And now it's starting to dawn on Tulani what has happened. So he makes sure he gets close enough to look at Utandi and have Tandy see him and draw her out of that crowd. So eventually she sees him and she makes her way towards him. And he starts walking away, like, you need to follow me. Now, because there's so much joy and celebration and festivities in the air, nobody really notices the whole scene and how Utandi has come to walk away. They go to a more quiet place and he's like towards the car and he's like, Tandy, what the fuck is going on? What is going on? What are you doing? Tandy is just standing there looking at them like, oh my gosh. Guys, they like, Tandy, explain now. And Utandi was like, I was going to tell you, I swear. Tulani's like, Tandy, talk. And she's like, I don't know how else to tell you this, but Paul and I got married. And they're like, what? What did you just say? Utulani cannot believe it. He is beside himself. He takes a step back. He's just like, this is my sister. I love her. I'm not about to come out my face and out my neck, but this is a mess. So he takes a step back. Naledi is looking at Tandy like, I cannot believe you would do something like this. The only person who's trying to keep a level head is Zala. And she says, just everybody calm down. Tandy, are you okay? First and foremost, are you okay? And she says, I'm fine. I'm fine. And she says, what is going on? Talk to us. What is going on? Because we have been turning this place inside out, looking for you. What is going on? And Tandy begins to explain. I can't say much now because of where we are, but Paul and I got married. That's why I left you guys the letter. I didn't mean for you guys to find out this way. I didn't want it to be this. I'm so sorry, you guys. I'm so sorry. Eventually, Tulani walks towards Tandy again and is like, Tandy, get in the car. We're going. Get in the car. Then Paul appears and Paul says, my wife isn't going anywhere. My wife isn't going anywhere. And Tulani is like, Paul, open your damn mouth again and we're both going to die out here in these fields. And Paul is like, Tulani, my wife is not going. Next thing, Tulani pushes Paul. Paul pushes him back. And Tandy's like, wait, guys, please. And she breaks it up and she's like, I will come back with you guys. I will be back at the Airbnb tomorrow. Please, just don't do this. Please don't do this. And they're all standing there looking at her. And Tulani's like, well, I'm not leaving. So if you're saying you're going to go back to the Airbnb tomorrow, fine. But I'm staying here with you and we'll all go back to the Airbnb. So they decide that Tulani is going to stay. Naledi, Erica, and Zala are going to make their way back to the Airbnb. So Naledi gets into the driver's seat and she says bye to everybody. They're all kind of staring at Tandy like, we don't know what to say. We are, even just the idea of leaving you here is just madness, but we're going to respect your wishes and we're going to go back. And so they start making their way back to the Airbnb and the atmosphere in the car is second to none. Nobody's talking. There's this tension and anxiety and confusion and pain and just this absolute shock. Nobody is talking. Eventually, they get back to the Airbnb and they all kind of just look at each other like, now ladies like, guys, let's just go. Let's sit in the sitting room. Let's get some dinner. They haven't eaten. They're hungry. Let's just get some dinner and figure this out. And so they sit there. They get themselves something to eat and they start talking. And now ladies like, Zala, I know you and Tandy are really good friends and for you, telling certain things may feel like a betrayal, but this situation is too extreme. We need to know what's going on. That's when Zala begins to tell them that, guys, Tandy's father is a very traditional Zulu man. He's not here for her dating any other man but a Zulu, and she has tried. It hasn't worked. And she was in a relationship a few years ago where things started getting serious between her and this man, and the dad broke that relationship up because he was foreign. Not only that, he's tried to set her up before. He's tried to intervene so much that Tandy has had to walk away from situations she should never have had to have walked away from purely because the man was not Zulu. And this has weighed on her. This has been a burden. This has been what has caused so much tension and friction in that household. But this clearly to me is desperation. Her father doesn't want to hear it. He's tried to set her up. He's broken her up with her. Like, he has done everything to keep her from the men she loves. And they're sitting there like, what the hell? What the hell? They did not suspect that this is how deep it was back at home. They now know that Paul, Tulani, and Tandy are coming back the next day. So they decide, guys, this is just too much. This is too crazy. They sit there talking about everything, talking about about Tandy's demeanor, everything they observed. They're trying to make sense of it, but they decide the only way we can even begin to make sense of any of this is we have an early night again. We wake up tomorrow. We wait for Tulani, Tandy, and Paul, and we hash this out. And so that's what they do. And of course, there's a lot of tossing and turning that night. But next morning, Erica wakes up early. She decides to go down and start making a big breakfast. She decides to put on some coffee so that by the time everybody arrives, they can eat and talk it out. And the other two wake up. Uzalo calls Tulani to find out how far are you guys. He says, we're almost at the B&B. We're on our way. And so she tells the others, they wash up, they get ready, and they wait. The three of them arrive at the B&B, and Tulani is much calmer than he was yesterday. He's much calmer. Utandi walks in kind of sheepishly, but, very apologetic for what she's done. But at the same time, this is a makoti now. She's a married woman. She's married the man she loves. And Paul, comes walking in after her. And Utandi says, can everybody meet in the sitting room area or dining room area? They dish up, they get their breakfast, and they sit. And she says, I have to explain myself. I have to explain myself. And she begins by telling them that a couple of months ago, many months ago, I tried to tell my dad about Paul. He wouldn't hear me out. I tried to introduce him to Paul. He wouldn't hear me out. The pushback was so bad that he was threatening that I break it off with Paul or else. He has forced other men in my face since I've been with Paul, trying to get me to marry them. He has committed me to families. The whole thing has been too traumatic and stressful, and I've been through this again. I know what I've chosen to do is extreme. And I want you guys to know now, here in front of Paul, in front of my brother, I had this conversation with him. I'm telling you guys, Paul did not talk me into anything. This was my plan. This was my idea. I told Paul this is what I wanted. And I told him this months ago, and he didn't like it. He didn't like it, but eventually he gave in and he decided, because he loves me too and he wants to marry me too. And when he saw that my dad was not budging, we decided this. We decided this for ourselves. And I'm sorry I didn't tell you guys. I didn't want to drag you into something or into a mess you shouldn't have been in. I didn't want you guys to have to lie, because you know my family very well. The whole point, the whole idea was that I was going to go for the 2-3 days, get the celebration out of the way, come back here, tell you guys what had happened. We would, if you guys were up to it, continue with our vacation. We were planning to have another wedding anyway. You guys, of course, were going to be at that wedding celebration, but we wanted to get the formalities and the traditional cultural aspect out of the way without burdening you guys. And that's why I wrote you the letter. And they were like, what letter, Tandy? And she was like, I wrote a letter. I put it on my bed before I left. I wrote you guys a letter explaining that this is what was happening. I was going away for a couple of days, for the 2-3 days. I was going to be back, and they were like, we did not see a letter. And when they started to go back, like, where could this letter have gone? The only answer would have been Auntie may have seen the letter because it was crumpled or on crumpled paper that she'd pulled open, thought it was trash and threw it away. So they were like, oh my goodness. And they started telling Utandi how everything went. Like, this is what happened when we didn't find you. We went to the police station. This, that, we called your brother. This is how we found, we went to a filling station or convenience store, and you were on the monitors and this, that. They were relaying this whole story, the craziness of what has been going on. And she couldn't help but burst out laughing. They all burst out laughing like, this is not a joke. This isn't even funny. And Paul too mans up and he says, I'm so sorry for putting you ladies through that. I'm so sorry. I so badly wanted to tell you, but Utandi made me promise. She told me it was not my choice. and I had to respect the way she was choosing to do it. That's why that day I left kind of abruptly, because I just couldn't stand here and lie to you guys. And of course, that day when you called and I said I'd handle it, I didn't know what to tell you guys. I thought you would give me that opportunity to handle it. And they were like, of course not. That's our friend. We were going to intervene. And he was like, I get it. So they decide that they're going to spend the rest of the day spending time together, quality time together, having a good dinner, spending time. They didn't have the energy and the strength to go out. So everything they did in the house, at the B&B, the swimming and all of that, just entertaining themselves. But they knew there's no way their vacation could carry on. They have to return the next day. And so that's what they do. They return the next day. They convoy Thulani in his car, Paul and Tandy in a car together, and the other ladies in their car, convoying, driving. They eventually get to the final pit stop before they get home. And Thulani tells Tandy to get in the car. They have to go to the family house. Paul makes his way to a hotel. The other ladies go their way. And eventually they pull up to the family house, Thulani and Tandy. They get out, they go in, and Tandy's mother is just so relieved her daughter's okay. She gets up to hold Tandy, to hug her, to kiss her, and the dad is immediately like to the mother, sit down. And he tells Thulani and Tandy, you two sit down too. And he says to Thulani, explain everything. And Thulani explains, and the whole time he's explaining, the dad is shaking his head, looking at Tandy in this disapproval, and just looking at her like he cannot believe it. He's so angry, he's livid, he's enraged. And Thulani explains to him, Dad, I do understand why you're so upset, but I get why Tandy did this. You have always been, and he's like, Thulani, quiet. And the mother tries to say something, and he tells the wife, you be quiet too. And he says, Tandy, I have done everything I can for you as a father. I have loved you. I have taken care of you. I've tried to give you the best. And this is how you disrespect me and dishonor our family. You need to go. You need to go and never come back here. This is not your home. Go. And the mother lets out this cry like, no. And the dad is like, quiet, Tula. Quiet. And Tandy tells her dad, I've always loved you. I will always love you, Dad. And I'm so sorry for disappointing you this way. It was never my intention. I never meant to hurt you. I never meant to do anything to upset you like this. I'm sorry. And the dad doesn't even look at her when she's talking. And Thulani says, Tandy, let me take you. Let's go. They go. They get back to the hotel where Paul is. They explain the story. Tandy cries. Thulani is trying to console his sister. And Paul says to Thulani, I think I should go and see your dad during the week. Maybe I can say something because what can I do? And Thulani says, I think that would be the honorable, manly thing to do. Maybe during the week I can come fetch you. We go to the house. And that's what they agree. And a couple of days later pass. They decide to go to the house and they pull up. Thulani enters first and Paul comes in. The mother is sitting in the sitting room and she gets up. She hugs Thulani. She hugs Paul. She congratulates Paul. She tells them to sit down. Can she offer them tea or anything? And they say, no, thank you. She asks about Tandy. She congratulates Paul again and says to Paul, please just look after my daughter. And while she's explaining all of this, the dad pulls up. He comes and he sees Paul sitting there with his wife and his son, and the rage comes over him. He doesn't say a damn thing. He goes to his room and he gets a gun. He comes out and he says to Paul, get out of my house. You get out of my house. And Thulani's trying to say, Dad, wait. And he says, get out of my house. And Paul knows, he can see the look in the dad's face. He's not joking around. Let me just go. So he gets up and he makes his way out. The dad is standing by the doorstep, front doorstep. There's 2 or 3 steps going down. Standing there screaming at Thulani. At Paul and saying, and Tulani, for you to have brought him here, how dare you? And he's shouting, and Tulani is trying to say, Dad, wait, this is not our intention. Please hear them out. How can you kick Utandi out the family? How can you disown her? And the dad is screaming, ranting, and raving with the gun still in his hand. And Tulani says, Paul, get in the car, let's go. And as the dad is screaming and shouting, Tulani and Paul are making their way. Now the dad wants Paul to hear every word of what he says. So as he's talking and he's edging forward, he loses balance and he falls off the first step and the gun goes off. It goes off. There is this loud bang. And before they know it, Utulani is on the floor and there is blood pouring out of this young man. The dad screams, the mother screams. Paul is in disbelief. He immediately starts holding Tulani to see where this bullet wound is, and there is so much blood. They load him into the car and they rush to the hospital, and they are so frantic, so frantic. They get to the hospital. Tulani is rushed to the emergency room, and Tulani is going to be okay. Tulani is going to be okay. Now, I know the last video I gave you guys the moral of the story, but this time I'm going to ask you, what do you think the moral of this story is?